3 weeks ago, thereabouts. The campaigning is relentless. The swing states are the focal point. Kamala Harris is in 3 states this Monday, spreading her influence far and wide. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Donald Trump, meanwhile, visits the storm-damaged North Carolina. Well, let's take a look back at their recent campaign stops. Kamala Harris has been trying to reverse a perceived reluctance among black men to vote for her. She made a key appearance at a black church in Georgia, while in Penn State, Donald Trump did a turn making French fries at a fast food chain which is known for employing a clown. We'll have a Monday update from our Washington correspondent after this report.
He's serving up French fries, handshakes and unsubstantiated claims. Donald Trump donned an apron at McDonald's on Sunday in an apparent jab at his opponent Kamala Harris, who he says never actually worked at the franchise, despite her claims she did.
I love McDonald's. I love jobs. I like to see good jobs. And I think it's inappropriate when somebody puts down all over the place that she worked at McDonald's. It was a big part of her resume that she worked at McDonald's, how tough a job it was.
But his trip, while full of salt, was light on evidence and on policy. McDonald's workers make an average of $13 to $15 per hour, but when asked whether he would raise the minimum wage, the Republican presidential candidate dodged the question. He saved most of his political rhetoric for later that day when he addressed a town hall in Pennsylvania. Trying to win over the pivotal state, he doubled down on his tough immigration policies and even wished Kamala Harris a happy birthday.
No, happy birthday.
Harris, meanwhile, was ringing in her 60th in a community church in Georgia as part of her Souls to the Polls push to appeal to more black voters.
In this moment, our country is at a crossroads, and where we go from here is up to us, as Americans and as people of faith. And now we ask a question, we face this question: what kind of country do we want to live in? A country of chaos, fear, and hate, or a country of freedom, compassion, and justice?
With just over 2 weeks until the election, the race is neck and neck, and both candidates know that it will likely be these battleground states that will decide the future of their country.
That's the sound of Eliza Herbert hitting the nail on the head there. It is those swing states that will decide it. Let's bring in Fraser Jackson, our correspondent, who's followed every step of this campaign and doing a fine job indeed. Fraser, great to see you. We're talking Harris, we're talking Trump. Let's start with the current Vice President, Kamala Harris. We know she's been to that church service in Georgia 24 hours ago to try to re-establish herself as a candidate for it's mostly black men, isn't it, who are hesitating about voting for her. Tell us about her movements today.
Yeah, well, I think it's safe to say that the Harris campaign is not really leaving any stone unturned here. They're effectively treating every segment of the population as though they're undecided voters, but a source inside the campaign tells me that what they're actually really focusing on is that 4% of undecided voters. So you're thinking maybe people who are maybe either unaffiliated or were potentially Nikki Haley voting Republicans back in the primaries. Of course, a lot of those people that voted, about the 25% that went for Nikki Haley, a lot of them will go home to the Republican Party, but the Democrats believe there is a significant enough chunk of the population which is so disillusioned with Donald Trump that they will vote the other way. And the way that they are doing that is by employing Republicans to send that message themselves. So Harris today is spending her time in the northern blue wall states, having been in Georgia over the weekend, and she's having a series of sit-downs with Liz Cheney, who is somebody who is not exactly a liberal and has been anti-abortion in the past, but now is one of the chief bell ringers for Kamala Harris, and the Harris campaign hopes that her words hold enough sway with that significant enough section of the electorate to move things in her direction. So they've already been in Pennsylvania, they're heading to Wisconsin and Michigan as well today. So a blue wall blitz, as it's being called here in the United States, for Kamala Harris as we get down towards the final 2 weeks of this election. She's also then going to head back to Pennsylvania later on in the week before heading to Georgia for a big ticket event with Barack Obama later in the week as well. So a busy week for Kamala Harris, but it really is those margins that she's working on.
And celebrating a significant birthday too, so hoping for a birthday bounce in support, no doubt. How about her opponent, Donald Trump? We saw him at a certain fast food chain, known, of course, for its employment of a clown on occasions. He had certain things to say about Kamala Harris's claims of having worked once upon a time for that very fast food chain. Trump on his way to North Carolina with no doubt more claims to be made, some of them factual, some of them less so.
Yeah, 3 stops in North Carolina for Donald Trump, and he's already been hitting that note that he's been hitting for the last couple of weeks about Hurricane Helene and how the White House and the Biden administration and Kamala Harris, by extension, have not done anything to support people in that region. Of course, that is a claim that has been pushed back upon and denounced by even the Republican governors of those states. So you're thinking of places like Georgia and Florida, but of course North Carolina has a Democratic governor in Roy Cooper, but they have been devastated by that hurricane, and there was concern on both sides, really, that the devastation left by that hurricane would make it harder for polling places to open and for people to get out the vote. But it seems that that hasn't really materialized. In all but a few of the polling places that were affected by that hurricane, polling has been able to get up and running, and we're seeing a good number of people in North Carolina already casting their votes as well. And Donald Trump, however, still trying to, again, carve out that electorate for himself. He managed to win North Carolina back in 2020, but there has been a bit of a change in the electorate there. There are more liberals in the electorate in North Carolina, especially around those big university towns of Raleigh, Durham, and the like. That could be where those margins play in Kamala Harris's favor. So Donald Trump is hoping to show that his opponent hasn't done enough for the people of North Carolina, but that is something that the White House itself is pushing back on. Karine Jean-Pierre at the press briefing today saying that Donald Trump's claims that the White House hasn't helped people are dangerous, and she says they are unhelpful. She finished by saying it is not what leadership looks like. So his comments have been pushed back upon not only by Kamala Harris but also by the Biden administration as well.
Very briefly, sir, fine margins could make the difference now, couldn't they? Because it is that tight.
Yeah, most definitely. This really is a marginal election, and if you look at the national average polls, they've been, moving closer and closer together. But anybody here will tell you that it's not the national poll that matters; it is the polling in those individual states. And we've gone from seeing Kamala Harris have a couple of points advantage in the blue wall states to effectively it being a toss-up now. So I think there's a bit of panic on the Democratic side. The Republicans feel like they're gaining ground. That is kind of par for the course, it must be said, for most elections, but of course everybody worried about whether the polls are accurate. There's a bit of a once bitten twice shy situation happening with 2016 and even 2020 to some effect. So people are still watching things intently, but the campaigns for their part saying that basically ignore the polls, get out and vote. That's the only thing you can do. And that seems to be resonating. We've seen a record polling, record voting in places like Georgia already. So, if that's anything to go by, then it could be a significant turnout this time around, even bigger than the turnout we saw in 2020.
Fraser Jackson in Washington with his finger on the pulse politically for us. Thank you, sir, very much indeed. We will bring you all developments in the run-up to voting day, November the 5th.